And we're back on the NJ Real Estate Show. If you're just joining us, we are about to talk today about the topic of the day. And today's topic of the day is leasing with an option to purchase. I have received so many emails. We've had actually a lot of people walking into our office these past couple of weeks who are actually looking for a lease with an option to purchase. And you're saying to me, well, what is that? These are individuals who are looking to rent a place, a house, a condo, a co-op, prior to possibly purchasing that property. And the way that the lease with an option to purchase works is that there are two things that actually have to take place at the same time. And I'm gonna take you step by step exactly of how that's going to work. Okay? First of all, I want to let you know that anyone who's interested in doing a lease with an option to purchase, it gives them an opportunity to do two things. One is, let's say, for example, you want to purchase a house right now, but you really can't. Credit-wise, your credit scores are not where they're supposed to be. Or money-wise, you don't have enough money saved as of yet, for your down payment, for your closing costs, and any other costs associated with the transaction. It gives you an opportunity to really say to yourself, okay, I really want to purchase this house, but I need to do this step first before I can get to a settlement table. And most of the time, with my experience of those individuals I've dealt with a lease with an option to purchase, they've been very satisfied at the end of the long goal to eventually get to the settlement table. But there are things, of course, in between that you need to be careful about, and I'm going to fill you in on all of that. But I want you to understand that when you do a lease with an option to purchase, it's really a benefit to this prospective buyer to do a lease with an option to purchase. Sometimes it's not as convenient for the seller, but sometimes it is when it comes to pricing. Because if the market goes down even more within a year, they can find themselves, getting still a good buy on their property because that's what they negotiated. But basically, this is how a lease with an option works. You want to rent a location that is a possible sale. And a lot of times, the way you're going to know if these even exist out there, because in the state of New Jersey, you have some of this that takes place, but you don't have a whole lot of it. And so sometimes it's not always easy to find a lease with an option to purchase. We start to see more of a lease with an option to purchase in this type of market. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is a market where there's so many houses for sale. Sellers are competing against other sellers. They can't sell their house. It's not selling right away. So they'll consider a lease with an option to purchase so they can get someone in there. That person's going to pay them rent, which is going to help them pay their mortgage, and then possibly within a year or 2 years from now, they'll also be able to sell this house to this tenant that's currently occupying the property. So how it works is you find a place with a lease with an option to purchase. What you're going to do is when you find a place, you're going to negotiate two things. The first thing you're going to negotiate is you're going to negotiate, of course, what the rent is going to be on that property on a monthly basis when you're going to rent it. Okay, so for example, you're looking at a place. Okay, the place is listed, let's say, for $250,000. They will consider a rental. Okay, so you go and you discuss with this prospective seller who's going to sell to you. I would like to rent this for, let's say, $1,400, $1,500, $1,600, whatever it is, whatever you negotiate. Based on that negotiation with that rental price, it's going to determine many things. And you're saying, what do you mean by that? When you negotiate with the seller, I want to rent this property for X amount of dollars, and I also want to consider the option to purchase it within a year from now, 2 years from now. You have to do two different things. The first thing you're going to have to do is you have to do a lease on the property to rent it. So we'll start there. If you're going to rent it, the landlord's going to say to you, okay, I'm going to rent this to you for $1,500, an example. You're going to pay me every month on the first the $1,500. I will give you a 1-year lease. After a 1-year lease, you have the option to purchase my property. Now there's another situation. There's two things happening at the same time with a lease with an option to purchase. Because a lot of people have a misconception of what a lease with an option is. They think, well, I'm just going to lease this place, and in a year from now, I'll decide if I want to buy it. No, there's a lot of negotiation that takes place now up front, ahead of time. You negotiate on the price to rent it on a monthly basis with the landlord. Now you're going to discuss a purchase price. You're going to negotiate a purchase price. And basically, prospective buyer, what you're telling the seller is, okay, I'm going to rent this for $1,500 a month to live here in the property for a year. And at the same time, what I would like to do is negotiate with you now. You have the property listed, example, for $250,000. I would like to buy this house from you in a year from now for $200,000. The seller may say yes, or the seller may say no to that price that you're offering them a year later to be purchased. You'll negotiate whatever the price is. He or she may say yes, they may say no, give me 210. Whatever the price is, you come to negotiation price on the purchase of that property. So let's just say now, for the example, it's $200,000. What you need to do now, and there's different ways that you can work it out depending on how you want to work it out with the seller, but I'll give you two examples. The seller will say to you, okay, on this $200,000 agreement, a year from now, it's a lease with an option to purchase, and that is exactly what it'll say, option to purchase. In a year from now, I'll sell you this for $200,000, but right now, to kind of hold this, I'll require, let's say, $1,000 deposit, a $2,000 deposit. It's the same thing, folks, just like if you're doing a regular transaction now. The only difference is you're not going to actually pay it till a year from, purchase it till a year from now. So what you do is you go ahead and you say, okay, we agreed to $200,000 on this house. I'm going to put a down payment of $1,000. That $1,000 is going to go, of course, in your favor, because that's money you've already put towards this property. So what will you need to have at the end of the year? 199 or whatever. So the seller says, okay, let's draw this up. So now there are two different agreements that get drawn up. You get the agreement that has to do with the leasing of the rent on a monthly basis for the whole year, and you have the agreement that has to do with the purchase of that property at the end of the year. Some sellers will negotiate a 1-year or 2-year option. The reason they do a 1 year is because sometimes that's the normal. 1 year. You give somebody a year to get their credit together, their money together, whatever they need to be able to qualify to purchase that house. They'll give you a year also because hopefully they're thinking, in a year, the market might not change that much. If he or she had it listed for $250,000, they're selling it to you now for $200,000. There might not be such a change within that 1 year, especially in the market that we're in now. We know that this year is going to be a great year, but is it going to be like a booming year? No. It's just going to be a regular, good, normal year. It's not like 2 or 3 years ago where everything was like double in price, all of a sudden overnight. That's not the case for this year. But let's say we're working with this year. Let's say we're working with this example for this year. So the landlord, that owner says, fine, 1 year. Sometimes a seller will give you a 2-year option. You don't really see too many of those. You always see more of a 1-year option. Why? Because in 2 years from now, the market can definitely change. And if it changes where the pricing in houses go up, that seller, he's obligated. See, because what happens, folks, is when you do a lease with an option to purchase, the seller has agreed to that price, and there cannot be any changes. So if they agree to $200,000, and 2 years from now, all of a sudden now his house is worth $290,000, well, they're missing out on $90,000. And really, really, they're obligated to sell to you as long as you're ready and willing and able to purchase at the time that your option is up. Because the option, that agreement of option, is going to have a deadline date. Okay? And you'll have to notify him he or she ahead of time that yes, you're going to go forward and you're going to purchase it. What I want to let everyone know is that at least with an option, it's very beneficial to a buyer because it gives buyer the time to get together what they need to get together to be able to do that option. For the seller also, it kind of gives them an ease of mind that, okay, I have a tenant. Not only is the tenant paying me on a monthly basis and I can pay my mortgage, but I'm going to have also a buyer at the end of the year. They're obligated to sell to you in an option. You're not obligated to buy in an option. But what will happen is that most of the time, a seller is going to protect themselves by sometimes putting in the contract. And this is what you have to be this is a very, very important, folks. Sometimes a seller will put in the contract, okay, I'm going to give you the option for a year. You're putting $1,000 down. Sometimes they'll put in the contract, but if you don't purchase at the end of the year, you lose this $1,000. And a lot of tenants, prospective buyers, they sign off on that because they really think in their mind, yeah, I'm going to purchase this at the end of the year. And you'd be surprised. I've had cases with lease with an option where the folks never got to purchase because they really didn't put their credit in order. They didn't get their monies together, and they ended up losing their money. I mean, whether it's residential, commercial, it's the same thing. The only difference is the amount of deposit that you actually give to that, that owner for that option. When it comes to commercial, they're going to always require a higher down payment, okay, because that's how commercial works. Residential, a little bit more lenient with $1,000 or $2,000, okay. So those are things you need to look at. Now, also with the option, what happens is that if you, the prospective buyer, do everything that you have to do, and you get to the end of the year and you go up to that owner, that landlord, say, okay, I'm ready to buy, then everything is normal. Now you go into a new contract, okay, which is an actual sales contract. And you're going to buy that property for $200,000. There's already $1,000 in place that you've deposited. And then you're going to do a regular transaction, whether it takes you 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days, however it might be. On the other side of that, if you are a tenant with an option and you decide, a few days earlier, 30 days earlier, that you're not ready to buy, that you don't have all your money ready, your credit score is not where you thought it was going to be because you really haven't been able to pay off a lot of things in the year, you really need to go to that landlord, and either you're going to make a decision. Either you're going to say to yourself, okay, I'm not really ready to buy, so I'm going to get out of this option and I'm just going to lose my $1,000. Or you can go to this landlord and this owner and say, listen, I have not met my goal in getting my credit where I want to. Prove to them, this is what I did. I paid this off. I did this. And even though I'm there, my score hasn't changed. They can't do a rapid supplement with my credit score because, the rules and regulations for, getting loans now is a little stricter. Can you possibly give me 6 months? Maybe the landlord will give you an extra 6 months with the option. Okay, because you say, get something in writing from the bank or something that in a few months, you're going to be up to date with everything. Your credit scores are going to change, and now you'll be able to buy, whether it's 3 months or 6 months. But try to get that extension from that landlord that, as a prospective buyer. If you know in 6 months you can definitely have, the possibility to purchase that home. You'd be surprised. Some of these landlords and owners will say, yeah, you know what, I'll give you an extra 6 months to be able to purchase. And then you draw up a separate contract, of course, that's going to say this is extended an additional 6 months. Okay?